Hi there, I'm Jason Reeve from ancestry.com and I'm coming to you today from Sydney, Australia. A little bit about me to begin with. I am the Content Acquisition Manager for Australia and New Zealand, and I've been with Ancestry now for about 4 years. So what does content acquisition mean? It means that it's my responsibility in Australia and New Zealand to seek out new historical content that we can put onto the Ancestry website. So this means I work very closely with archives, registry offices, genealogical or historical societies, just really anywhere that holds historical records. And I'll work with that entity to bring those records up onto the Ancestry system so that you can then use them for your family history. In addition to doing that content role, I also do a lot of community engagement. So while I travel around Australia and New Zealand speaking with those archives or those registry offices, I also do a lot of talks at genealogical societies or family history events about family history, about ancestry, or even ancestry DNA. So many of you might have seen my face before, you might have even been to one of my talks, but if this is your first talk with me, I welcome you and I hope you get something out of it. So today what I want to focus on is what you can do with that vast number of records we have on Ancestry beyond just building a family tree. So there are some individuals, there are organisations that are doing some really unique things with the records that we have on Ancestry, and I want to just give 2 examples of that today. The first example comes from my own history. Obviously, just like many of you, I'm a family historian, and I started doing family history well before I worked for Ancestry. So I want to talk about one of the things that I did, taking the records and the information that I found on Ancestry and using it in another format other than just building a family tree. Also, with Anzac Day right upon us, I want to talk about another example, an organisation that's doing some incredible things with the military records that we have on Ancestry. I've been really lucky to be involved in the work that they do and actually see the results of that hard work on more than one occasion. And so I want to tell you a little bit about that organisation and the work that they do today as well. So, as I said, I'd like to start with my own experience. I'm sure many of you are going to be able to relate to this. Some of you will have already done things like this. But I want to talk about how I went from just using the records on Ancestry to build a family tree to actually creating something physical and tangible that lives and breathes today still. So my family history journey, I mentioned that I've been with Ancestry for 4 years, but it actually began closer to 10 years ago. I found a passion for family history and I wanted to explore that well before I worked for Ancestry. Now I know 10 years doesn't seem like a long time for a lot of you. You've been doing family history for maybe 50 or 60 years. Some of you are brand new to it. So everyone's at a different point in their journey. But I can tell you one thing, there weren't many of my friends that were doing family history. I was quite unique in that. That being said, I found that passion and I wanted to pursue it. And what really got my teeth sunk into it was a bit of a family mystery. So we had a line in my family that we were disconnected from, we knew nothing about. And I really wanted to uncover that mystery and figure out why that had occurred and who the people are in that family line that are here today and can I connect to them. So this was kind of before Ancestry DNA was something that you could go and buy. So it wasn't just a case of taking a DNA test and connecting to people. It was all about the paper trail. And it's one thing to find information on people who are deceased, our ancestors from the past, but then bringing that information back to today and finding living people, especially without DNA, that was quite challenging. So my journey took maybe a year or 2 to find living people and start really getting a good sense of the story that I was seeking. But as I went through that process, there was a bunch of things that happened. So obviously I started to meet people, just virtually to begin with or online. They were spread around New South Wales and around Queensland, and at the time I lived in Adelaide. So as time went on, I started to make this plan about visiting these people, and I had the opportunity when there was a family wedding in Queensland, and I decided that I would do a road trip from Adelaide to Queensland, and as part of that road trip I would make stops and visit people. But there was another important stop that I wanted to make. As I went through my family history research, I discovered that one of my ancestors had actually built a hotel or a pub out in a regional town in New South Wales. And that town is called Lochinvar. So as I understood more about this hotel, as I started to see pictures and read about it, I really wanted to go and see the hotel. I confirmed that it was still there, and so I wanted to go out. And the reason that I really wanted to go out was that, just like a gravestone or something like that, it was a physical, tangible thing that was connected to my history, and I wanted to go and see it. But even more than that, I knew from going into hotels and pubs in the past, many of them have historical elements on the wall, photos or information, and I thought this might be an opportunity to see if the hotel had some of those things too. Because as easy as it is to find records online these days, there are still a whole bunch of records out there that are not online. If there wasn't, I wouldn't have a job. So they do exist out there in paper format, in books, whatever they may be. And so just because you are comprehensive in your searching online doesn't mean you have everything that's out there. So I wanted to see what this hotel maybe had on the walls or anywhere, even in their back room, that might be relevant to my family history and that I could obtain and then share with other people who were interested in the same people I was. So as I said, I had the opportunity to do a road trip. I did do that road trip, and as I said, I stopped into that hotel and I was actually really disappointed. There was nothing at all on there from a historical perspective. There was nothing on the wall. They had nothing, absolutely nothing at all. And it was still fantastic to visit the hotel and make that connection. And for any of you who have visited a house, a gravestone, a landmark, anything that's tied to your family history, there's a particular type of energy that comes from that that's hard to articulate, but you feel that connection. And I certainly did. But I couldn't ignore the fact that I was disappointed that there wasn't something that I hadn't seen before, or anything at all, really. So I took that opportunity and I thought about that, and I asked the people while I was there, look, there's nothing that you have currently. If I was to create something for you, photos, information, would you hang it on the wall? And of course they said yes. Now, why this is really important is that time and time again in my family history experience, I have found that just because you're a person asking a question and there's no answer out there for you, doesn't mean you shouldn't share that question. And what I mean by that is, take a message board for example. If you're searching for an answer to a question and you're getting no results, be the first person to post that actual question. Because what you'll find is, whilst that might not yield you the answer, at least not straight away, it might connect you to other people who are searching for the same thing as you. It certainly happened to me where somebody did that. They posted a question, I found the question, and we're now connected and we share the research that we find. So if you put it out there that you're searching for something, maybe you'll get lucky and someone will find you and provide that answer, but also you might actually connect to someone who's seeking the same information as you. And so to me, creating something to put into this hotel, where for me on my journey, it was a focal point and I wanted to go in and see, that might be something that will benefit others in the future. And also it was a way of protecting and sharing the story of my ancestors. So that's what I did. I created this frame, I put pictures in it, I put a timeline, not just about my ancestor in particular, but about the hotel obviously, about everything that happened in that hotel within reason. So that people who were going there weren't just going to see my ancestor and go, oh, that's the guy I'm looking for, but all the other licensees that were there as well. Because it might not just be my family line that brings someone to that hotel. So I did that and I gave that to them. It was absolutely fantastic. We really enjoyed having that moment together and putting it up there. It still hangs there today. This is several years later. And what's been really special is I've actually had people come up to me at events or message me and say, I went to this hotel and I saw the frame. And that just completely warranted what I did and makes me very, very happy because I took my family history out of my own little isolated family tree bubble and shared it in another format, right? In a physical format that people can see. And for some people, this means they might create a book or they might create a family history chart. Look, it doesn't matter what you want to do, but doing something is just another way to replicate your history and put it out there. And for some people, looking at a nice big graphical graph, they love that. Some people don't. Some people want to read a book. Some people don't like the books. Some people want to see pictures. You know, everybody consumes that information differently. So the more you can create, the more you can engage your own family and also people outside your family on the story of your ancestors. So I absolutely encourage you to think of things like that. There were other little things that I did as well, but always keep your ears out for opportunities like that, where you can share your family history in a format that's maybe different to what you think or what most people are familiar with. And what you'll find is, especially if it's got an element to it that you're sharing it with other people, that's a really, really good feeling. And as family historians, we couldn't do what we do without records. So in a sense, you're creating another record, and that's something that people can access. There's so many things in my family history that I know about from written word that no longer exist, physical things that no longer exist that I wish they did. So these days in this digital age, it's unlikely that we're going to lose things that we have online, but you never know. So it's great to create physical replications of things, presentations on things, that kind of whatever it is, and just really stretch out your family history. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit more about groups or organizations that are using the Ancestry records to either assist or achieve the outcomes that they're seeking. We partner with many groups all around the world by providing them free access to the records that we have online. I mentioned before that Anzac Day is upon us, and with that in mind, it seemed appropriate to call out one group in particular, and that group is called Medals Gone Missing. Ancestry's relationship with Medals Gone Missing actually predates my own. It was only once I replaced my predecessor in the content role that I became aware of the group and the work that they do. So whilst multiple people might assist and multiple sources might provide information, the primary two people leading the charge are Gary Trainer and Sandra Smith. Gary has been actively involved in the preservation of military history for over 25 years. He's also served in both the New South Wales Police Force and the Army Reserve, and when he's got the time, conducts tours on the Kokoda Trail. As for Sandra, I'd be hard pressed to find a more passionate and persistent researcher, and you can see that in every project that she touches. I've worked on many projects with Medals Gone Missing over the years, but there's one in particular that was profoundly special for me as well, and that's the story of William Willie McGonigal. 4 years ago, Medals Gone Missing were contacted in relation to a military medal that was found by a gentleman using a metal detector in a place known as Granite Town. Granite Town is situated on the outskirts of Maruya here in New South Wales, Australia. Granite Town was a purpose-built village constructed in 1924 to house the many skilled Scottish and Italian mason workers that came over to work on the Sydney Harbour Bridge and Memorial. The village consisted of single men's quarters, family homes, a store, community hall, and also a school for all the many children that were present on the site also. With the completion of the Sydney Harbour Bridge in 1932, Granite Town became a ghost town. As this gentleman was exploring the former site of Granite Town, his metal detector came to life as he explored around the foundations of an old home, and there he found the missing medal. Medals Gone Missing accepted the challenge, and they set out to not only find the recipient of that medal and their story, but see if they could reunite the medal with living descendants today. Over the next 2 years, using multiple sources, which included the World War I British service records on Ancestry, they worked tirelessly to get a better understanding of the story that this medal belonged to. Over those 2 years, they ultimately found the person they were looking for and even managed to find a living descendant of that person. Now that's no small feat when you consider that the World War I British service records are incomplete. About 60% of them were destroyed during World War II bombings. The medal belonged to a Private William McGonigal, born on May 29th, 1891 in Aberdeen, Scotland. Sadly, the team discovered that the medal had been posthumously awarded to William's mother. Witness accounts of Private McGonigal's death tell of how his battalion received too many hand grenades and were adding the surplus into another bag. When that bag was full, it was picked up, and upon noticing smoke coming from the bag, it was dropped and it exploded. Private William McGonigal, Private James Humphreys, and Lieutenant Corporal Andrew Wood Cuthbertson were all killed in the explosion, with another 30 soldiers also injured. The bodies of the fallen soldiers were taken to Bronfay Farm Military Cemetery and buried. It's not precisely known how the medal made its way to Australia, but what is known is that Willie's two sisters did come out to Australia with their husbands, who were part of the Scottish contingents of experts there to work on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So we can only assume that the medal made its way with them, but we may never know. Now, why this story was quite compelling for me, and why it became something that was very special in my life as a family historian, is because through the work of Medals Gone Missing and connecting to that living descendant, we were able to arrange a medal return to that family. And that medal return took place at the military cemetery in France, and I was lucky enough to be there. On April 28th, 2019, myself, the Medals Gone Missing team of Gary and Sandra, and the descendant of William McGonigal all came together and met at Bronfay Farm Military Cemetery. As we stood around the headstones, you can imagine emotions were running high, as the somber moment muted all else. Some words were shared, some tears were shed, and the medal was placed back into the hand of the descendant, reuniting the military artifact with the family for the first time in over 100 years. During my time in family history, I haven't seen a more powerful and emotional example of taking a historical object and bringing it to the present. Knowing that Ancestry plays a role in moments like this is just one of the reasons why I love and I'm so passionate about what I do, and I'm so lucky to work with the people that I work with. But it also shows that you can take static records and bring them to the present and create life-changing and dynamic experiences within your family or even within someone else's. Building a family tree is where it begins, but where you take it from there is entirely up to you, and really you're only limited by your own imagination. In the meantime, I'll continue working as best I can to acquire new records for you to explore on the Ancestry website. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you got something out of it. I look forward to doing many, many more.